Okay, everybody, we are going to try this. Recording a video on my phone so that I can say hello. Fight Evil, Read Books is the theme of today. This is my favorite shelf of books. Just kidding, I lied. This is one of my other favorite shelves because these are all of my word books. If you ever need tips on puns or cussing and the morphology and kind of like the word-based etymology of it, let me know. And it's good to see you all. Thanks again for conferences and for helping work through the snafus with some of this audio recording. Today I'm going to get into our last little bit of lecture for this project. A lot of styling convention type stuff. Get ready for grammar. I'm super psyched. I hope you are too. And here we go. Cool.
Alright everybody, here we go. I do recognize that my microphone is much more quiet than my other recordings, so if you need to adjust those settings, please do. I'm going to try and fix this as I edit things together, but I am having a little bit of trouble with that, so I do apologize. Video update, here we go. So as per our course objectives, we're working on bringing a lot of these last elements together in the revisions, making sure that you're synthesizing, that you're creating a strong and unique argument, purpose, audience, all these rhetorical terms, that you've got a clear understanding of them and are demonstrating them in your work, and as you're revising, making sure that you're keeping your audience in mind there as well. A few more questions that I've gotten that I wanted to address just quickly. So your argument style, we started with Tolman and Rogerian. They might have changed into the website. You might have addressed the counter-argument a little bit differently as you transition this into your content pages. That's okay if you have changed from what you originally planned. This might be helpful to address in the letter of explanation how you did follow these argumentation models or why you adapted them. That may be one option for you. Remember to cite your images. You should be using open source images. You have Flickr, Pixabay, a lot of the websites have these built in. A note on your works cited, just kind of saying that pictures came from whatever site, that will work. If you did not use open source images, make sure that you attribute it in the comments or in the caption, citing it, linking it to your source that you pulled it from. If you use Google Photos, if you took your own images, make sure that those are credited appropriately if they're not open source. As you're writing, this is different from a traditional argument because we won't have a lot of large blocks of text in a website. Think about this in terms of readability, in terms of, again, the genre analysis that we started at the very beginning. Think about how you can demonstrate this writing concisely or break up the paragraphs meaningfully to help your audience with those. You might also find it helpful to address multiple audiences. I've talked about this with some of you, and showing a connection to other groups. For instance, why parents will influence teachers, or why the media has an effect on parents. Showing those connections can be really helpful, but just make sure that you're always coming back to your primary audience, looking at one group most specifically. Ultimately, remember that this is 6 to 8 pages worth of information with your letter of explanation. Figuring out how to divide that, if you have more content words on your home page and less on a content page, thinking about how you divide and organize this should make sense to you and your audience, and again, might be helpful to explain in your letter of explanation. As we think about purpose, depending on who your audience is, could depend on if you're really kind to the counter-argument, if you're really vocal and more aggressive in your approach. Thinking again about how these letters affect your audience, which will relate back to your letter of explanation, is really important in deciding how you want your tone and voice to come across. With formatting, I will be using a desktop to grade these sites. They don't have to be adjustable or mobile friendly. Just keep that in mind as you're going. In your letter of explanation formatting, you can also choose to use subheadings. These should still follow MLA or APA. As you get into your citations, as you're putting up your works cited page, do make sure that every source that you use in your writing is attributed correctly and leads to a source in your works cited page. The works cited page should only reflect the sources that are cited, so please take a few minutes as you're putting this page up to make sure that you've referenced each of these, to make sure that they're alphabetical. Formatting for the works cited page doesn't matter so much in terms of being double-spaced with a hanging indent. Please do keep them order to help me find them as I review your sources. With this, make sure that, like I said, anything that you cited in text matches everything that's cited on your works cited page. Another quick check you might do is making sure that you've eliminated all of the stock content. In some of my first reviews, it looks like a lot of that stock content is available. For instance, pointing me to your bakery in San Francisco. I don't think any of you have one of those, so make sure that all of that's gone. Make sure that all of the sample text is gone as well. Check your links. Make sure that when you click the button that it goes to the right place. Double check your headings and things for typos, since those are just really painful for me at least. And making sure that you have that it's all functional. As you include information, making sure that you have kind of what I call these quote sandwiches. Making sure to introduce the point, have the evidence in the middle, and explain why that information is relevant, why it's effective for the audience. Kind of sandwiching your quotes like this, rather than just having a block of text dropped in with quotation marks around it, is going to help situate your audience much better, providing a little bit more context. For instance, I have a few examples here that all chop down this quote in a little bit different of a way. Some of them introduce the author, some of them draw attention to the information, some of them, the third one introduces the publication. All of these are great ways of helping situate the information and are all appropriately cited for a web page or a source where you don't have a page number or year to cite. So check these as well as you're revising. This can be kind of lumped in with your works cited check, making sure you have all of these sources represented in your works cited page, making sure that you're using appropriate author tags, page numbers, years, all that good stuff. And now we're to the fun grammar stuff. So, this is from Anne Rame's book, and some of these might be a little bit familiar from previous lessons. So, as you need, feel free to pause and go back to check your work. I'm going to roll through these, and I'll be here whenever you come back. The first goal is to cut repetition. Any phrases that seem redundant, that seem repetitive, need to be taken out. If you think about your topic, there are some phrases that you're probably latching onto pretty heavily. So as you're thinking about your topic, which ones appear in every single paragraph, these can be really helpful to rephrase, to figure out a different way to say it, and can also help make your writing a bit more clear, a bit more direct towards your audience. When we check for action, we're looking for active versus passive voice. A lot of you in science writing might have been told that passive voice is better. This is particular to science writing. In argumentative writing, typically active voice is preferred. This is because we have a lot better idea of who's doing the action. So in my example here, passive versus active voice, we have our first example. There was a discussion of the healthcare system. It tells us what happened, but not really who was doing it. With the active voice, politicians discuss the healthcare system. Not only do you save yourself a few words, those of you looking to cut down on word count, but it also helps show us who's in charge of the action. Politicians are the one discussing it. The other way becomes a little bit more vague. It can become a little bit slower paced. So this is another writing technique that might help you save words, be more direct, and have a more engaging writing style. In connections, making sure that you're using these grammatically correctly. There's a lot of different ways to connect sentences to avoid short, choppy sentences, and to make sure that you're joining longer sentences appropriately. For example, coordinating conjunctions connect two independent clauses, two full sentences. You can use the acronym FANBOYS to remember these. So, for example, in my sentence here, I'm trying to model these for you. So, coordinating conjunctions connect two complete clauses, period, could be a period. So, we have our fanboys. A full sentence must follow. Two independent clauses connected with the fanboys and a comma. In a subordinated conjunction, you have a dependent clause and an independent clause, an incomplete sentence and a complete sentence. So, again, in my example, If you use a subordinated conjunction, comma, a full sentence must follow. This first part here, if, is one of our subordinating conjunctions. This indicates that you have a dependent clause and a dependent sentence coming, meaning that it depends on there being more to follow. So, incomplete sentence plus a complete sentence, you get a more complex blend that's still grammatically correct. Transitions are another way to connect your pieces. As you're building through these different pages, as you're developing content within a page, think about how you're moving from one idea to the next. A lot of these you can use semicolons, you can use commas, you can use the paragraph structure, even kind of signal words first, second, third. Not as sophisticated that way, but it's an option. So think about how you're moving your audience from one idea to another to show them how to proceed through your website. I think we've talked about choosing the best words before, so thinking about meaning and kind of the denotation, the literal definition. In our first example, we have the dog barked at me, which is fine, but the mastiff snarled menacingly at me gives a lot more content and packs a lot more punch. So think intentionally about your word choice to make sure that it matches what you want to say to express the full meaning of what you intend. Secondly, it can also help kind of dictate the genre and audience you're reaching for. Instead of saying the working conditions were gross, you can say the labor conditions were disgusting. Instead of working conditions, labor brings in a little bit more highly elevated diction, and disgusting, again, when you go to what words mean, gives a little bit more in terms of what the conditions are like. You can also think about the connotation, kind of the implication or the background knowledge that accompanies the word. The idea of a crowd brings a much different image to mind than a mob, because they have such different contexts in which they're used. Crowd versus mob gives you a very different picture. As you're working through your drafting, make sure that you're also avoiding vague words. Stuff, people, things, these are all really vague terms, and you can probably be much more specific, especially having done the amount of research that we have going into this. So, get rid of things, get rid of stuff, people, and start to be more specific with your vocabulary. I may have shown you this before as well, but as you're thinking about your word choice, the words in black are more basic word choices. The ones in red kind of intensify it. So instead of saying afraid, you could say terrified. Think about this as you're building your word choice and as you're working in some more highly elevated vocabulary, as you're trying to match your audience and write to them appropriately. We haven't talked so much about logical fallacies, but this is one huge logos killer. So, one way to do this is making sure that you avoid absolutes. For instance, anytime you say every, all, always, never, you start to work yourself into risky territory. Instead, think about hedging language and how you can kind of scale back your claims as needed. Instead of saying always, say often. Instead of saying everyone, say many or most. And think about how you put those claims together. Similarly, any kind of if-then statement paints you into a corner as well. When we look at causation, kind of outlining step 1, step 2, step 3, if-then clauses can really work to simplify that. So, trying to think about how you get your audience from step 1 into step 2, developing the warrant to avoid those logical fallacies is going to help you a lot. Alright, if you're working on citation, I'm going to leave these slides here for you. I have a lot of ideas between these as well as APA, and I'll leave those for you to look over as needed. Okay, sorry if I just gave you motion sickness. As you're working through, a couple additional strategies that could be helpful for you. Go back to the grading rubric, go back to the assignment sheet, especially since some of these things have changed. Sorry, more so in the assignment sheet, not so much in the rubric. Read your work out loud to yourself. See if you can hear the differences and maybe editing mistakes. Work through a reverse outline. We started with our outline. You go back to what you've actually written and try and work backwards. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And try and work backwards think about the purpose of the homepage. What does each paragraph actually contribute to your argument? Work your way backwards. Reading backwards works if you go to a page and start with the last sentence, and then the second to last sentence, and the third to last sentence. This jars your mind just enough so that you don't know what to expect, that you can work through some of these more sentence-level editing type things. If you've done nothing but work through this project for the last month, take a day off, put it away, take some time, and come back to it with fresh eyes later. Just a reminder, you also have your extension for this project. If you would like to use the extension, I do need an email from you by Saturday, May 2nd, requesting the extension. With this, there's no grading penalty, and this will give you until Wednesday, May 6th, in order to turn in your paper for full credit. If, no matter what's going on, if you've already used your extension, if you're struggling, if whatever is happening with you right now, please do make sure that you communicate with me. If I don't hear from you, I will follow the syllabus just because I don't have another policy to fall back on. So, if you need anything, please let me know. Otherwise, know that the syllabus does outline kind of a stages of deduction with, and after 48 hours after the deadline, I do not accept late work. So, as of Tuesday at midnight, your work will not be accepted if you haven't turned it in. Of course, the extension gives you more time, and talking with me, I can work through a lot of other situations with you. Please make sure that you communicate with me. The last thing that I'm asking for is a request for feedback. Typically, I provide a rubric. I include marginal comments kind of in line as I read, like your peer reviews do, as well as an end comment in summary or in paragraph form summarizing your strengths and weaknesses. Unfortunately for the website, I don't have the option to do marginal commentary. Instead, I'm offering the rubric and an end comment. If you would like this, I'll kind of narrate my experience with your website and give you that feedback. Or if that's not going to be useful to you, let me know. The commentary is what takes the most time as I'm grading, and with a shorter time to give feedback, time is of the essence, so any relief would be much appreciated. Either way, I'm happy to provide whatever type of feedback that you like. That is your right as a student. That's my job as your teacher. No judgment if you don't want it. No hard feelings. So, if you do not include a comment, I will not provide that feedback. I'll just include the rubric. Which takes us to our homework. Your discussion post question, this is the only question I'll ask you to include, is an excerpt from your letter of explanation or a description of one of these rhetorical elements that you're analyzing. Tell your peers which rhetorical feature you're working on, how you addressed it in your website. Then, you'll respond to 3 peers. This will give you a chance to see how your peers are approaching these different topics, these different rhetorical concepts, and how they're including readings, or you might suggest readings that they could include there too. My hiccups are bad today. I don't have word count guidelines on these posts for you. Instead, I'll leave this to you so that you all can facilitate this together. Since we are working toward our final draft, there is no Sunday assignment. Since we're submitting the final assignment, there are no Sunday assignments this week, just submission of the P3 final. Like I said, please include with that a comment letting me know what type of feedback you would like. If I don't get a comment, there won't be feedback. So, include your letter of explanation with the link to the website, and you will be all finished. All right. Good luck with your final project, everybody, and I'll see you soon.